Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. It looks like we've got a lot of people showing up, and probably some of that is because we missed last week. I missed last week, that is. I actually had quite a severe migraine headache, so I wasn't in a good place to be able to answer your questions last week. So I'm glad that many of you have returned. I also see a lot of new faces here tonight, so that's good too. And I appreciate if you keep sharing these webinars with your friends that are in the Lyme community or others that you think might benefit. The more people that I can help with this illness, the better. And as you know, there's just not a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of information, but I don't know how much of it is good and accurate at times. So what I do give you in these webinars is based upon what I see work here in my practice, okay? So this is based on the research that I read, and then I try in my practice on my patients. So I hope that you find some of these recommendations here in the webinar tonight useful. As many of you know, also my thinking about Lyme is published in what I call the Treat Lyme book. It's an online book that you'll find at www.treatlyme.net. Essentially, most of that site is the Treat Lyme book. If you have questions about Lyme, I probably have written an article about it there, and that would be a good place to start looking. It is subscription-based, and I know many of you don't want to pay for things. I understand that your finances are stretched, but just realize that when you support the work that I'm doing there, you're supporting my ability to develop more articles, and you're also supporting my ability to help people that don't have any resources at all right? So please support by subscribing to that book and looking there for some of the information that you need as well, too. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. For those of you that, one other thing, I am doing a recording of the webinar tonight. So tomorrow morning, I will send you an email link that will show you how to get access to that article. But if you don't find it, if I don't get it to you for some reason, be aware that you can also find a link to the webinar recordings by just going to the website, our main website, www.treatlyme.net. Look at the webinars page, and on there you'll see a link to the recordings, okay? So the recordings are always made available by the next morning. As long as I don't have any technical snafus, I'm able to get the recordings edited the night after the webinar, the night of the webinar, okay? So when I go home tonight, I get to spend time editing the video. So anyhow, I should have that ready for you tomorrow morning. And then I hope tomorrow morning to have the next series of webinars planned for June. This is the last one for May. I'm not going to do one next Wednesday. So look for that tomorrow morning too, so that you can sign up for the June webinars as well too. All right. So the way these webinars work, you create them. You create them with your questions, and then I get to create them with a response. And no two webinars are alike. Many of the things I discuss from one webinar to the next may have some similarity, but they're always a little bit different. I will, if you are participating live in the webinar tonight, you're going to see that I actually do post the questions on the screen so you can see them. In recorded versions, like on a iPod or a podcast, and also on a video recording of this, those questions don't post. They don't show up. It's only part of the live webinar that you can see those. So I'll read the questions too. So those of you that are listening in through other means tomorrow to recorded versions will be able to hear what this is about as well too. And then one last piece of housekeeping before we get started. When you write your questions, please only hit enter when your question is done. You will need to hit enter to submit the question to me, okay? But if you submit it, if you hit enter before the question is actually done, what happens is that creates multiple questions on my end. Each time you hit enter, it creates a separate question. And that gets to be very hard for me to follow from my side of this and to administer it, all right? So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and take the first question here. This is from Carrie. Hi, Carrie. Let's see. Which medication do you recommend for Lyme's to boost immunity that is also prescribed for drug addicts? Also, do you have any recommendations for energy? I'm so weak and bedridden. Thank you for all you do. God bless. Okay. So yes, I can help you look at both of those. All right. So the medicine that can boost the immune system is a medicine called naltrexone. Naltrexone is a narcotic blocker. It blocks narcotics so that people that have drug overdoses from heroin or narcotics, we give them this medicine called naltrexone, and it basically gets rid of those, moves those narcotics off of the narcotic receptors, okay? Now, narcotic receptors are also known as endorphin receptors. And our own body has a unique system of pain control that we make, pain control chemicals called endorphins. Now, endorphins are natural narcotics, basically. Endorphins also regulate the immune system. They can cause white blood cells to work more effectively, and they can turn down an immune system that is attacking us. So for some people with Lyme, for instance, one of the reasons that they're sick is that the immune system causes or Lyme triggers an autoimmune illness in the immune system, where the immune system attacks the body much like it would attack the body in rheumatoid arthritis or lupus arthritis, which are inflammatory arthritis conditions, all right? So what the idea is behind naltrexone is if we give it to you, we bind those endorphin sites, and the brain, which is supposed to control everything, does not like that. And it tries to maintain level or homeostasis or an even balance, okay? And so what it does, the brain sends out a bunch of chemicals to the endorphin-producing cells in the body, and it says, make more endorphins. So the body responds, those cells respond and make a lot more endorphins. Now, when the naltrexone wears away, what happens is those extra endorphins flood those endorphin receptors. And that has the effect of regulating the immune system in a good way, especially for people that have autoimmune illnesses. Now, when we use naltrexone, we give it as something called low-dose naltrexone. And the reason it's called low dose is that naltrexone is manufactured as a 50 milligram pill. And when we use it for low-dose naltrexone, we use it at 1.5 up to 4.5 milligrams, okay? So not 50 milligrams, but at a much smaller dose. And the reason we use it at a smaller dose is we want to provide a temporary blockage of those endorphin sites. We don't want a permanent blockage. We want a temporary blockage. And if we use it at about 1.5 to 4.5 milligrams, what we see is that eventually that blockade wears away and those receptors then get all flooded with the endorphins, which regulates the immune system, okay? Now, we don't have any proof that this helps in Lyme disease. What we do have is some limited science, very limited science, that shows it does help in multiple sclerosis. It does help in something called Crohn's disease, which is an inflammatory arthritis condition of the intestine lining, okay? And it does help in fibromyalgia. That's where we have research that shows there's benefits, and those are all autoimmune illnesses, okay? So we've tried it out in Lyme, and it sometimes helps. I know Dr. Richard Horowitz, who has written a book that has similar content to what my Treat Lyme book does, actually. He talks about using naltrexone on his patients. And recently I even heard him talk at a conference where he talks about using it on most of his patients. I don't quite find the benefit that he does. I think he's actually overusing it. What I see is I think it helps with inflammation and also maybe to make the immune system work better about 15% of the time. I don't find it helps most people. I find it maybe helps, gives benefit about 15% of the time. And when I tend to add it into my treatments is about 6 to 9 months into a treatment. If somebody is having a hard time getting better and all the other stuff I recommend to build into a basic treatment is not helping a person, then it is one of those steps I consider doing at 6 to 9 months into treatment to see if it might make a difference, okay? Now, one last thing about naltrexone. Because it has to be made at this lower dose, this 1.5 up to 4.5 milligram dose, it has to be mixed up by a compounding pharmacy. So regular pharmacies don't do it. A compounding pharmacy would wind up mixing that up, all right? And it does require a prescription, okay? Now, there's a whole article I've written about this. I even give the dosing recommendations, how you start it. I recommend people take it in the morning, for instance. Some people recommend at night, but if you take it at night, it's going to disturb your sleep. So you need to take it in the morning. All right. But there's a whole article. I'll show you how to find that article here in a minute where you can read with greater detail about what I just talked about. All right. What about energy? Well, to get energy, you need to do a lot of steps that are critical steps in anyone's Lyme disease treatment. And in fact, they're so critical, they're built into what I call the successful treatment recipe, which is my Lyme disease treatment guideline, which is the steps anyone should take in their Lyme disease treatment throughout their treatment, okay? And so you need to take the basic steps. And if the basic steps aren't working, then at about 6 to 9 months also, you take steps to repair the energy factories that are found in our cells called mitochondria. So let me show you. I'm going to show you the treatment guideline so that you can follow along on the steps you should be taking to improve your energy. And then I'll show you that article about mitochondria energy, which is the latest article I wrote. I actually have written a whole new article about mitochondria energy. All right. So to do all this, I'm going to do a screen share here. Looks like that didn't quite go right. Hold on here a minute. Okay, so I'm back at our main Lyme disease site. This is the treatlyme.net. This is the homepage on treatlyme.net. Many of you probably seen this before. Essentially, again, most of this site is our resource called the Treat Lyme book that you see up here on the left-hand side, okay? And you can go ahead and search it by the table of contents. You could even do search the index with this search function. But anyhow, this is all the Treat Lyme book up here, all right? Now, down here at the bottom, you can see this navigation tab. There's the Lyme Guidelines tab. If you click on that, this is my successful treatment recipe. This is what I've written as a guide for the steps that I even have my existing patients here at the Healing Arts Partnership. These are the steps I have them take as well, okay? All right, so first of all, you want to make sure that you get sleep. And it's critical to get actually about 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And the reason is that restores the immune system. It also helps lower inflammation chemicals called cytokines. Okay, so first of all, get sleep. I give you recommendations about how to do that here. Number 2, be on a paleo-like diet, okay? And I have a whole article about how you build that kind of a diet here. It's called the best brain inflammation, pain, energy, and detox diet ever. And I actually do believe it. I stand behind that kind of a title. But it's basically a paleo plan that helps support your energy factories in your body called mitochondria. It's also good because it's low sugar, low carbohydrates, so that while you're treating your Lyme with antibiotics, you're not going to trigger a lot of excess yeast to grow, okay? Right. Number 3, you want to lower inflammation chemicals made by white blood cells called cytokines. So cytokines get made in excess by white blood cells in Lyme disease, and they actually in excess give you most of what we call Lyme disease symptoms, but they suppress the immune system too. So you want to lower them. My preferred way is with curcumin, which is a component of the Indian seasoning turmeric, okay? Number 4, be on ashwagandha, all right? So ashwagandha is an Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine herb that has been used for thousands of years because it's been observed to give better energy, all right? So you want to be on ashwagandha, 400 milligrams. And with real low energy, I like to have people take 2 pills in the morning and 2 pills between 1 and 2. Number 5, see if you have low adrenals or if you have low thyroid and correct for them. And I tell you how to do that here. Basically, to figure out if you have low adrenals, see if you have a lot of the low adrenal symptoms. See if you have a lot of the low thyroid symptoms to see if you have low thyroid, okay? Number 6, be on a good multivitamin. Number 7, make sure you don't have too many yeast, because if you have too many yeast in your intestines, just like Lyme, they trigger too many cytokines, all right? And if you have too many cytokines, those cytokines make you feel bad, including they give you fatigue and they suppress the immune system. How do you know if you have too many yeast in your intestines? Well, take a look at the questionnaire that I created for this down here. You would click on the yeast screening questionnaire. And with that yeast screening questionnaire, basically, is a screening tool that if you score high enough on it, there's a great likelihood you have too many yeast. And that score is 140 or higher, all right? And then finally, treat your infection, your Lyme infection, and also treat your co-infections, all right? Those are the basic steps, all right? Those are the critical things you should do to get well, all right? Now, what do you do if 7 to 9 months into treatment, you're still not getting better? Well, take a look down here. Part 13 is the special considerations for 6 months and beyond. And one of those things that you would look at doing is to improve the function of your energy factories called mitochondria. All right. All right. And so this is the article that I recently wrote, that I recently updated about what to do to fix your energy factories called mitochondria. So you might want to take a look at this later too, because there's a lot of useful tips in here about how do you fix your energy factories when all of those other steps that I just said to do in the successful treatment recipe don't work. All right. All right. So I know that's a lot of stuff. Okay. But what I want to point out with Lyme disease is not a magic bullet. There is no magic bullet that I can give you that's going to fix this one thing or that one thing, and suddenly you're going to feel better. The problem with Lyme is ultimately, as a result of having the germs in you, that creates a bunch of other imbalances that have to be corrected, right? So you got to get sleep, for instance. You got to lower cytokines. You got to correct the hormone problems created by too many cytokines, causing your hormone systems not to work, all right? So you need to get your energy back. You got to fix a lot of things. And that's essentially what a lot of that successful treatment recipe does. So take a look at that. But if you're doing all that, you're 6 to 9 months into treatment and you're not getting better, then you want to do the steps that I suggest to repair your energy factories that are found in your cells called mitochondria. All right, and I have a whole article. I showed you that article. Go ahead and if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. You'll get some good information about that article that will tell you how to fix your mitochondria as well too. Okay, all right. One other thing, that mitochondria repair that I suggest, the techniques that I suggest, there can be average energy improvements of 40% by 2 months of doing some of the key steps that I recommend for your mitochondria repair. All right, and that's based on research actually too. Okay. Good luck to you, Carrie. And I know that's long-winded, but there were 2 key parts to her question, but I think you can see where some of the responses would benefit anyone with Lyme. You've got to do the steps in the successful treatment recipe, or it's going to be hard to recover. Okay. All right. Let me go back here. All right. So I'm just getting rid of Carrie's question. All right. Hello, Craig. Let's see. After 3 years sick with Lyme and co-infections, I tested positive for Qfever P1 and P2, but only on the IgG. Is Qfever transmissible through ticks, and could it be contributing to my symptoms? So no, I don't think that Qfever is transmissible by ticks. It is an infection that people can get unrelated to Lyme disease. All right. And the fact that you have elevated IgG antibodies can indicate that your body may have effectively dealt with it on its own, all right? So when a person develops antibodies, they can develop 2 families. There's a family called IgM antibodies and another family called IgG antibodies. Whenever you get acutely ill, it is the IgMs that you develop first. And after about 3 months in most infections, IgMs go away and they get replaced by IgG. And once you make IgGs, they're the memory of the immune system. You cannot tell by looking at an IgG if the germ is still active or not, all right? Some people postulate that if the IgG levels are really elevated, like way, way high, that can indicate the immune system is still fighting that infection, that it's still active in you. But I think the science on that is a little limited. I don't fully agree with that. And when I've gone after Qfever before, I just don't find it that beneficial. I think it's one of those things that is quite common in the world around us, actually, that probably most of us have the ability to get rid of and is not an ongoing problem in most people. Okay. Now, if you just notice, I said IgMs go away, they get replaced by IgGs. And when you look at an IgG test, you can't tell if the germ is still in you because IgGs are the memory of the immune system. So like when you got that polio vaccine as a kid, you are still making IgG antibodies against that polio vaccine. And it's those IgGs against polio that make you immune. That's how the immunizations work. They cause IgG antibodies to be made, okay? Now, regarding IgM antibodies, Lyme infection. Lyme is interesting. So in Lyme disease, IgMs don't go away 80% of the time. And in fact, when somebody has Lyme of a year duration or more, even though in all other infections, IgMs go away by 3 months, that's not the case in Lyme disease. 80% of the time, they still continue. So many of you probably have seen infectious disease doctors who look at your positive IgM Western blot, The IgM, a Western blot, is a way of seeing if you have antibodies, measuring if you have antibodies. You probably have had specialists that have said that's a false positive test. And the reason they're saying it's a false positive is if you've been sick for over 3 months, then they're going to say you shouldn't be making these IgMs. It's a false positive test. They're wrong. They just don't understand that in Lyme, 80% of the time we keep making IgM antibodies, okay? All right. So generally, Craig, I don't treat for Qfever. I think it's one of those infections that a lot of my colleagues go looking for, trying to explain why people don't get well. But even when I do treat it, and I have in the past, I don't find benefit. So I usually do not even look for it these days. Okay. All right. Thanks, Craig. Good luck to you. All right. All right. This next question is from Sherry. Hi, Sherry. Let's see. Red blood cell magnesium is low. What could cause deficiency despite being on 400 milligrams of magnesium malate since I contracted Lyme and co-infections 3 years ago? Could this be causing ongoing symptoms? So yes, you could be having, well, let me start over again. So most of us are deficient in magnesium. We, as a society, our soil, where which gives magnesium to the food we eat, plants that grow in the ground absorb magnesium out of the soil. Most of our soils are pretty depleted in terms of some of those key nutrients these days. And it's very common that most of us are magnesium deficient, okay? So I want you to know that, all right? Second thing I want you to know is that the way we define normal is we pull a bunch of healthy people off the street and we do blood tests and we measure their magnesium in their red blood cells, for instance, okay? And then we artificially say that people that are not within 95% of the median or the average, we say if you don't fall within 95% of that, either side, so like if the average or median level is right here, if you don't fall within 95% in this big area, then we artificially say that you're abnormal, all right? That means we artificially decided it. So somebody's got to fall outside that 95%. So this level that you have could be your low, or it just may be what's normal for you, okay? So I just want to point that out, all right? Now, 400 milligrams is a pretty good dose of magnesium, but if you're truly magnesium deficient, I'm going to dose it somewhere up around 600 to 800 milligrams a day. The only limiting factor you have in magnesium is that if you take too much for what your body can handle, you're going to get diarrhea, all right? And actually, what your body can handle, I probably said that incorrectly, for what your intestines can handle, all right? So what happens with magnesium is in the intestines, it hangs out on the inside of the intestines and it attracts water. So if you wind up having a lot of magnesium hanging out there and it attracts a lot of water, guess what? You're going to get diarrhea, all right? But so if you have magnesium deficiency, the big thing you may have is some low energy. The other thing you can have is a lot of achiness, all right? So I would consider going up on the amount of magnesium that you take, Sherry, okay? All right, good luck to you. Thank you for that question. Hello, Katie. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Do you think Bactrim twice per day and rifampin twice per day with tinidazole finally kill my Bartonella? My legs and hands feel very weak, and I feel like crap all the time. I don't know if the weakness is caused by Babesia or Bartonella. Are tiny red dots Babesia or Bartonella? Okay, so let me try to kind of tease apart this question. All right, so first of all, so I have an article that you might want to take a look at later. It's in the Treat Lyme book. It's called Kills Bartonella, a Brief Guide. And in that article, I like to break effective Bartonella treatments into 3 different classes. I classify them as Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. I'm pretty simple-minded when it comes to how I write things, okay? So Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 treatments work for Bartonella about 85 to 90% of the time. Tier 2 treatments work about 75, 80% of the time, and Tier 3 works about 70, 75% of the time, okay? Tier 3 basically are herbal treatment options. Tier 2 involves using a tetracycline along with what is known as a macrolide. So that would be like a Biaxin or a Zithromax coupled with a minocycline or doxycycline, all right? The tier 1 treatments, there's a whole bunch of different antibiotic combinations you can use. There are treatments that are rifampin-based treatments, all right? And you happen to be on one. That rifampin Bactrim is a rifampin-based treatment. There's Bactrim-based treatments. And then there are what I call fluoroquinolone, which is Levaquin or Cipro-based treatments. What I find works best is if you're on 2 antibiotics for Bartonella, and most 2 antibiotic combinations will work to get over Bartonella about 95% of the time, at least the 2 antibiotic combinations I recommend. Okay, so read the article later. You'll see the dosing that I recommend. All right, the other thing about Bartonella is if a treatment that you're using for Bartonella does not seem to be giving you any relief in your Bartonella symptoms, not all your symptoms, but your Bartonella symptoms, by about 2 months of using it, it's probably not a treatment that's going to work for you, and you need to change to one of the other tier 1 or tier 2 treatments, okay? Now, who do I do a tier 3 treatment for? Well, they're herbal. I use those for people that can't tolerate the prescriptions or who just don't want to be on prescription antibiotics. I sometimes will wind up doing that, all right? So I know you're probably all wondering, what are those recommendations? Well, read the article, okay? That's what I've written the article for. You can find out how to do it and which herbs I recommend, etc. Again, it's called Kills Bartonella, a brief guide. I want to show you where you can find that. Oh, and then Katie, just so you know, in terms of your treatment, tinidazole isn't doing anything for Bartonella. It's helping with the cyst form of Lyme, and it's also removing the biofilm that can be found in Lyme disease too, all right? All right, let me just do a quick screen share. Okay, so I'm back in the Treat Lyme book. So how you're gonna find these articles about what I recommend to kill certain germs, look in this chapter called Infection Treatment Plans, okay? And in here, you're going to see a copy of the Lyme disease treatment guideline, all right? I've got an article here on how to kill viruses and when you might want to do that. Here's my article on kills Bartonella. Yep, it almost takes a stick of dynamite to do this sometimes, but this is the article. Click on that. You're going to see all of the recommendations that I have, okay? All right. So let me go back here again. Okay, now finally, see, in terms of these red spots that you're having, okay, so red bumps, like mini pimples, that can be Bartonella. If your red spots look like little blood blisters under the skin, like even the true color of blood, that color of red, that sometimes can be what a Babesia rash looks like. And I'm afraid I don't have one to show you. I probably ought to create a, makes me think of maybe one of the articles I'll create is an article about pictures of various rashes that you can see in Lyme disease and what they may indicate. But so anyhow, that's about the red rash. Let me see. So you could feel like crap because of any of the infections, all right? So if you're trying to figure out if you have Bartonella or Babesia, and many of you know if you've been on my webinars before, I don't think that testing is that useful. The reason is if we test for Babesia, we estimate 15 to 20 strains, and we can only really identify well by testing 2 of 20. Okay, so we got to look at what the symptoms tell us. Bartonella, we estimate there's anywhere from 15 to 30 strains. And the way we figure out if you have Bartonella is with tests, but again, I don't think they're that good. I don't do them because we can only find 2 strains of Bartonella with testing. So I like to look at what the symptoms are. And if you have enough symptoms of Bartonella, you have Bartonella. And if you have enough symptoms of Babesia, you have Babesia. And I will treat based on the symptoms, okay? So if you want to know where to find that, I'm going to do a quick screen share here again. But this is, again, one of those things that you can go back and look at later. There is an article in the Treat Lyme book chapter called How to Diagnose. All right. So if you're wondering, do I have yeast? Well, I got a whole article about it here. If you're wondering if you have viruses, there's a whole article about how to figure out if you have viruses too. All right. And then there is an article about how to diagnose Babesia. But finally, there's an article that kind of looks at both Babesia and Bartonella called It Could Be Bartonella or Babesia, the Signs and Symptoms, or the Symptoms and Signs, okay? Click on that. You're going to see I list out all the key symptoms that you want to consider to see if you have Bartonella or if you have Babesia, all right? Let me go back here again. All right. Katie, good luck to you. Thank you for that question. All right. Hello, Jill. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. What do you think about ozone treatments, ultraviolet blood irradiation, low-dose chemo, dendritic cell vaccine for the treatment of Lyme, and the use of plasmapheresis and blood transfusions for the treatment of babesia? But you packed a lot into that question. Let me try to break it down one by one, okay? So ozone and ultraviolet blood irradiation are part of a group of treatments called oxidizing agent treatments, okay? And other oxidizing agent treatments could be high-dose vitamin C. Yeah, vitamin C at low doses, like under 10,000 milligrams, is an antioxidant. But when you start using it at really high doses, it's an oxidizing agent, okay? Other oxidizing agents are hydrogen peroxide treatments, ozone treatments, and UVA, UVB treatment of your blood. Okay, those are oxidizing agent treatments. All right. High dose oxygen, like in hyperbaric oxygen, can be an oxidizing treatment too, but there's some different science about that. All right. Other than hyperbaric oxygen, I am not a big fan of oxidizing agent treatments, and there's two reasons. Number one, I don't think they work that well. What I see is they may help about 40% of the time, and there's other things that do a better job. I might consider using them if everything else fails, okay? Now, the way that they work, oxidizing agents work by damaging the fat membranes that make up the covering of a germ, and they can damage the DNA. But the problem is they can damage our own cell fat membranes and our own DNA, all right? Now, they have a greater chance of damaging the germs because germs don't have antioxidants, okay? And we do in our cells. But if you do this repeatedly over time, you may be creating more injury to your body than what it's worth, all right? So I don't think it's worth it unless everything else has failed. So I'm not a big fan of them because I don't think they work that well, about 40% of the time. And I really don't think you can do these on an ongoing basis. I don't know what the ideal is amount, but I usually would recommend my patients, if they want to pursue this, probably not doing more than about 6, because I'm worried about the long-term consequences of doing that, okay? Now, there is research on hyperbaric oxygen, where you go into a dive tank, a hyperbaric tank, a high-pressure tank, and you breathe 100% oxygen in. First of all, I don't think they work that well, but in terms of do they harm you, maybe not. There's some evidence that the cells in the body actually will start creating more antioxidants to protect themselves if you get oxidizing agent treatments with oxygen, okay? All right, so that's that. In terms of a low-dose chemo, I'm not aware of using it for Lyme. I haven't done it. I haven't seen others do it. Dendritic cell vaccine. Dendritic cell vaccine. So dendritic cells, everyone, are a type of cell in the immune system that is kind of the scavenger, the first type of cell that will find a germ or something we could even be allergic to, anything, okay? And then it has to present it to what are known as T cells in our immune system, where then the immune system takes over and starts to develop a reaction. To be honest, Jim, I haven't heard of dendritic cell vaccines for this as well either. And what you'll see, everyone, you know that I have answers for about everything, but I don't have answers for everything. And sometimes when people ask me questions here in these webinars, I learn of new things that others are trying that I'm not aware of. So, Jim, you've just sparked my interest, at least in the dendritic cell vaccine. I wanted to see what that's about and what others might be doing with it. But it wouldn't be a common thing that most Lyme doctors are doing at all. Okay. In terms of plasmapheresis is a way of cleaning out the liquid part of your blood, the non-cell part, the liquid part of the blood. And it is something that can be done when babesia gets out of control and the drugs don't work, okay? And so that is something that could be done. I've never had to resort to it. Usually I'm able to get babesia taken care of in a chronic setting using my recommended babesia treatments, okay? And if you want to know what those are, just like Bartonella, I've broken them into 3 tiers. There's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And there's many choices you actually have for babesia, but you'll find that in the infection treatment plans chapter, and it's an article called Kills Babesia, a brief guide, okay? So take a look at that later. You'll see I have many ways that I recommend you can go after babesia. And I've never had to do a plasmapheresis or even a blood transfusion treatment for that, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Jim. Thank you for that question. I'm going to have to look at the cell vaccine here to see what that's about, okay? All right. Take care. And good luck to you. Hello, Kelsey. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. What is your opinion of Thymus treatment? Can this stuff really modulate, restart the immune system? How about stem cells? Okay. So the thymus, everyone, is an immune system organ that sits here in the chest, right underneath your chest bone. And when we are kids, it's big in size. And when we get to be adults, it kind of shrinks up and is not that active. It releases immune cells, and it also releases a protein called thymic protein A. And thymic protein A is useful at turning on the antiviral part of your immune system and part of the bacteria part of your immune system too. Now, I like to use thymic protein A. I don't actually use thymus gland because I haven't seen it to be helpful, but I think part of the thymus, this thymus protein A, is useful in terms of people that have repeat virus infections, and you want to get them so that when they get a virus, it doesn't escalate and become a full-on problem. Okay, so like I use thymic protein A as a product called ProBoost when we're in viral season and people keep getting repeat viruses. Or to head off any viruses. So the way that I have people take it is at the first sign of a viral infection, a cold, flu, stomach virus, you take a packet of this thymic protein A sold as ProBoost under your tongue, and then you do it again in 2 hours and one more time in 2 hours. So you repeat it 3 times in the first day, repeat it as frequently as every 2 hours. And then you do it again on a second day. On the second day, you spread it out. You do it 3 times, but you spread it out throughout the day, all right? And that can stop infections in their tracks, all right? And that usually is about the only situation I use it for is repeat virus infections. I also will use thymic protein A as part of protocols I use to treat chronic viral infections if somebody get those. And I'll have them take 1 packet at least 1 time a day, okay? Again, the product is called ProBoost. Stem cells, there are centers in India and I believe over in Europe that are doing stem cell work for Lyme. It is, I think, what I would call a desperation treatment, which is nothing else works. And if you're a person of resources, it's something you could try. And I say try because there are some people that do get benefit, but I think on the whole, most people do not get benefit from stem cell treatments, okay? And so it isn't where I put a lot of my resources. And if I had active Lyme or if I had Lyme, that is not where I probably put my resources. I think most of the other recommendations I have in the successful treatment recipe and things you can add to that if the treatment isn't working well, I would start there first. I think that the stem cell treatment is something to consider more as a last resort, and they're expensive, and that would be something if you have resources to do that as well too. All right. I want to just do a quick screen share here. I want to show you something. Okay, so I'm going to go. This is, as you know, I recommend a lot of supplements in the Treat Lyme book, and I just want to show you. This is my store. This is where my patients get their supplements. These are the same supplements that I use with people here in the clinic. So if you're looking for a high quality product that I've screened along with Dr. Brooke to see if they're safe and also to see if they use the most effective active ingredients, this is where you would come look for things, okay? So for instance, the ProBoost product that I told you about, you would find here. You can either look for it by searching for medical problem, or you can literally just hit this search bar up here and go ahead and type in the name of the supplement, okay? So this is where if you're looking for high quality products, you wonder, what do we recommend? This is where you'd find it, and this is even where you can consider purchasing it as well too, okay? All right, let me go back here again. Okay, so thank you for that question, and good luck to you, Kelsey. Let's see, Carrie, it seems like you asked your question twice. I'm just getting rid of it there. Hello, Kathy. Let's see, can Herxing cause damage? How do I know when I need to stop trying to increase Banderol and Cemento? Can 1 drop per day get me well? I'm making 1,000 milligrams of I'm taking, you're not making, I'm taking 1,000 milligrams of curcumin 3 times a day and quercetin, glutathione, and cholestyramine, but Herxing is still a problem. Okay. So there are some people that I have gotten well, helped get well, by having them take either 1 or 2 drops a day of Banderol and Cemento. It's possible, okay? So the key thing to think about with any medication, whether it's herbal medication or whether it's a prescription medication, is what we're most interested in is a level that kills your germs. And that may be a different level in different people, number one, okay? But also, ultimately, what determines a drug level in your blood is determined by how much you take and how quickly your body cleans it out. Or another way of saying it is how quickly your body detoxes out the chemicals you're taking, okay? Yes, we have to detox the supplements out that we take. We have to clean them out, all right? And we have to clean out the herbal supplements we take, the herbal antibiotics like a Banderol Cemento, right? So there are some people that I've come to believe, there's not a test for that. We don't have a test for this yet. But I believe, given that some people can only take that 1 drop twice a day of a Banderol Cemento, for instance, I think what's happening in those people is that their detox mechanisms are impaired. And not only are they impaired for handling Lyme toxins, for instance, but they might be impaired for handling and cleaning out the amount of Banderol and Cemento they take, okay? So if you've got impaired detox, you don't need to take as much to maintain a good level in your blood. So there are a handful, well, not a handful. There's a number of people, yes, maybe 2 handfuls, maybe 3 or 4 handfuls that I've had in my practice over time that all I could give them is 1 or 2 drops of each of Banderol Cemento a day, and they get well, all right? And in fact, I just happened to see one this morning where we can only get her on 5 drops twice a day of Banderol Cemento. And for the longest time, it was only 1 drop a day period that she could do. And she, who came to see me after being set up to go into hospice, that's how sick she was, okay? She was dying from Lyme. And we gradually we did a lot of heavy detox when she first came to see me. And we started her out on 1 drop of Banderol and Cemento. And now about 1.25 years, 1.5 years later, she's now been able to progress up to 5 drops, actually 4 drops twice a day is what she's on right now. And she's like 70% better, okay? So it's possible. You don't need to use high doses of Banderol Cemento or of any other antibiotic to recover from Lyme, all right? So what's too much of a Herx? Well, yes, if you Herx, so when you Herx, so first of all, what is a Herx? Well, actually, let me step back. So I want to talk about cytokines again. I mentioned them earlier tonight, and you'll see they tie into Herxing, okay? So cytokines are good and bad. Cytokines are chemicals made by the white blood cells when they see a germ. And on the good side, the white blood cells make them to cause more white blood cells to be made, to create more white blood cells, draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and help them work better. That's all good. Cytokines can be good, okay? But in Lyme disease, sometimes in toxin illness, and sometimes in too many yeast, the immune system doesn't do a good job getting rid of those problems, and it tries harder and harder, and eventually it makes too many cytokines. Too many cytokines basically give you all your Lyme symptoms. In fact, it's fair to say, it's accurate to say that when we say somebody has Lyme disease symptoms, what they really have are excess cytokine symptoms, all right? So too many cytokines make it so you can't think. They disturb how your hormones systems work, our control systems work. They interfere with your sleep centers so you can't sleep. They give you fatigue. They make you hurt all over, etc. I can go down that list of Lyme disease symptoms, and the majority of those are too many cytokine symptoms, okay? Now, when you start killing Lyme germs, the immune system sees the dead bug parts, the proteins and the cellular material, the stuff from the inside of the cell, along with toxins, and it makes more cytokines, all right? So a Herxheimer reaction is a cytokine flare, and it means that everything that is your normal Lyme symptoms is going to get dramatically worse because those symptoms are all cytokine symptoms too. Okay, now here's the problem. Too many cytokines can suppress your immune system, all right? The other thing is that degree of inflammation sometimes can injure nerves and even your brain. So you've got to be careful not to overdo it. Now, what's overdoing it? It really is person dependent, okay? That's the kind of thing I usually like people to talk it over with their physicians, all right? But I try not to overly herx as a rule because it could hurt a person over time. And when I use the herbs Banderol Cemento to get somebody well, my guideline on that is you only increase if you're not in a bad herx. You don't go up on the dose if you're herxing severely. You pause at the dose that you're at, okay? All right, one last thing that I want to say. Two other things, okay? So I'm going to do a screen share. I'm going to show both of these.